The scene was dead anyway. A music scene lives, a music scene dies. The stories, however, are immortal. The scene was dead anyway is a look into the lives, communities and music scenes that helped shape an entire generation. Welcome to The Scene Was Dead Anyway, and I'm your host, Rick Walland. This is episode number 11, and today I'm joined by Barney Wakefield, an influential musician based around the Brighton DIY music scene. He's been in bands like Epideme, Shudder Pulps, and his current project is called Lower Slaughter. Before we start, if you're watching on YouTube, please could you like and subscribe to my channel to help the podcast grow. And if you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could you leave a review under the ratings and review tab. You can also find me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway. I'm also on Instagram, instagram.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway. And I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/TSWDA. Here's a short clip taken from a Lower Slaughter music video, the song Caliban and the Witch, released on the Box Records, and you can find the full video on YouTube. Barney Wakefield of Lower Slaughter, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, sort of trying not to go too mad in lockdown, but
yeah,
all is good. Can't really complain.
So for people who don't know, who is Barney Wakefield? Do you want to just give us a little intro, what do you do and what kind of music you play?
Okay, so my name's Barney. I'm from Worthing, which is like it's like a large coastal town not far from Brighton. That's where I grew up. And I've played in bands nearly 20 years now. I was like trying to work this out the other day in prep for this, and yeah, it's probably thereabouts 20 years or so that I've been involved in bands of some kind or gigs. And the band I'm playing at the moment is a band called Lower Slaughter. That band's been going for, how long's that been going for? About 7 years or so. I've been in other bands before that, but Lower Slaughter's kind of, the main project. Yeah,
and we'll get to Lower Slaughter a bit later.
Okay.
I've been listening to a lot of the stuff, man. I'm really digging it. I love it.
Oh, cool,
very
man.
much got the a lot of like Part Chimp influences there, or like similarities, and I'm a huge Part Chimp fan, so yeah.
Same. Yeah, I think when Low Slaughter sort of started, I think Part Chimp, Harvey Milk, Piss Jeans, that was kind of the general vibes. We weren't trying to imitate any bands, but that was definitely the kind of bands that had influenced us to a sort of to a minimal degree, you know.
Yeah. So you grew up in a place called Worthing, a small seaside town, south of England, about 10 miles from Brighton. So how was that, and what kind of music were you listening to early on when you were a kid, and who were your kind of idols and influences? And
so I guess the easiest way to describe this is, so my dad is a record seller and a promoter, but he's been a record seller all my life, and so I kind of had quite an early education in music because of that. So from quite an early age, you know, he got me into stuff like The Fall, Captain Beefheart,
nice.
You know, stuff like that. I mean, my very first musical love. If I want to go really early, it would have been like Elvis. I was like a huge Elvis fan when I was a kid. Like my earliest memories really are like, my mum made me an Elvis suit and I just used to parade around the house in that all the time, and I was just obsessed. But then quite quickly on, like, after that, like, bands like The Fall, Captain Beefheart, Buzzcocks, sort of like, mostly like 70s, 80s stuff. And then as I got a bit older, like sort of like early teens, pre-teens even, like sort of around the age of like 11 or 12, that's when my dad started taking me to gigs and stuff, and started, introducing me to other things. Like I saw Billy Childish quite early on, and that was like a real inspiration to me. Like, I became quite inspired by him.
Who's that? Sorry, who did you say?
Billy Childish, from like the Headcoats, and he does various different things. He's like an artist and a musician. He's kind of like a sort of quite pivotal in the sort of UK garage punk scene.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't heard of him. Hopefully,
he's something of a legend, really. He's had various different bands over the years, and that they're all absolutely killer. And I saw him, really, really early on, and then and also like bands like Fugazi and stuff.
Yeah. So you mentioned when you started going to shows, like your dad was taking you to some shows. What were apart from the one that you mentioned, what were some other kind of instrumental kind of shows that you remember in your teens, and when did you start playing in bands as well, I guess?
Yeah, well, so my dad started taking me to shows probably from around the age of 10 or so, and so I said already, Billy Childish, and he took me to see Fugazi when I was around that age.
Wow.
Maybe 11 or 12, and that was that just exploded my head. It was like it's kind of hard to really describe, because especially because I was still at school. I was still a young kid at school, and I'd go into school the next day after seeing Fugazi with my dad, and no one would care. So it's this kind of like sort of it's kind of like weird sort of thing that I kind of enjoyed, but I was still kind of just enjoying it on my own a bit.
So do you remember the show? Like, I mean, I've not had the fortune of being able to see them live, so whenever I had a previous guest who said he mentioned that he got to see them live as well, and I was just like, damn, missed out, man. But that must have been a fucking insane show. Just like, I just seen them, like video footage of them like playing live and stuff, and just looks like so much fun, man.
Yeah, I saw them twice actually, and the first time would have been around 99, 98, and they were just absolutely amazing. Like totally, just wired and so energetic, and I didn't really know them that well prior. Like it was like in those days, like my dad would just say, "Oh, I'm going to see this gig tonight. Do you want to come?" And sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. And I think he probably gave me a Fugazi record like earlier that afternoon, and I just like sessioned it, and then got in the car with him, and we watched them. And there are lots of gigs like that around the sort of late 90s. Like Les Savy Fav is another one that really springs to mind. Saw them around the same time in a small venue in Brighton, and they were amazingly good. And I remember watching them because I was so small, being that age, and I was standing on a table watching them, and towards the end of the set, the bass player kind of like spotted me and sort of like waved at me to kind of usher me over to like join them on the stage, and I just
nice.
I was like no, I was like shaking my head, and I always kind of regretted it because I thought, why did I do that? But weirdly, about 20 years later, I was at the same venue watching my friend's band, Pigs. And they were playing on the very same stage, and Adam, who plays guitar, did the same thing. He spotted me watching them, and waved at me to hop on stage and join them.
And this time you did it.
Well, yeah, because I think not in normal circumstances I would have been like, no, I'm not joining you. But because it was that venue, and I just had this flashback of that sort of regret of seeing Les Savy Fab and not, taking up the bassist offer. So I was like, make up for lost time.
Which venue is that then?
So it's a venue. It's called the Hope and Ruin now, but back then it was called the Lift, and it was quite a grimy, sort of dimly lit, small venue above a pub. But now it's like a really like nicely done, well established. It's like one of the main venues in Brighton for like sort of mid-level gigs.
Yeah.
It's it's really, really cool people running it, and we launched our first album there. It's like, it's probably my favourite venue in Brighton now. When it was the Lift, it certainly wasn't. It was like a really run-down, pretty horrible venue, really. But now
so what's it called now then?
It's called the Hope and Ruin now.
The Hope and Ruin, right? I'll check it out.
Yeah.
And Ruin, yeah. So what about yourself? Like, in terms of starting to play music yourself in bands and that? When did your venture start as a...
I started playing in bands properly around the age of 13, 14. And that kind of coincided with my dad starting to put on shows as well. It kind of all sort of happened around the same time, really. So I was always trying to form bands at school, but like no one was really interested. I was, they normally wouldn't last very long. But I became friends with a guy at school called Mike, who I formed one band with, and that we played about 3 gigs or something, and then quite quickly after that we formed another band which was called Epideme.
Right, yes.
For a few years after that. So this would have been like sort of around 2002, I'd say 2002, 2003 was when I like properly started playing in bands and playing gigs and going to gigs, like all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned sort of early noughties. I like to refer it to the noughties or early 2000s. Who were the kind of key bands and like labels and music venues when you started playing when you started Epideme and around that time? In kind of Brighton and that area.
Yeah. I mean, there was kind of like a bit of a golden period, I guess, around that time of bands in Brighton that we quickly became friends with, who we're also fans of. So like I'm Being Good, Charlotte Fields, Cat on Form. Cat on Form were a very important band to me and my mates that I was making music with at the time. They were like such a incredible live band, and they're kind of lost in time of it. No one really talks about them anymore. They kind of came and went, but when they were around, they absolutely blew everyone away. But they kind of existed in a time just before MySpace and then YouTube and Facebook and all that. So there's not much of a kind of history online for them.
There's nothing like chronicled or any.
No, I mean there's the records, of course, that they released, but like they're sort of I think because they weren't around for very long as well. They did just kind of come and go, and then they went on to do other bands that mostly became kind of bigger. But they were great. So they were like a really important band to us. And then there are other bands like not in Brighton, so like Bilge Pump, Lords.
They've been around for ages. They've been together for so long. Bilge Pump that they've they've kind of spanned over like 2 generations. Same with I'm Being Good. Like that, both those bands have been going since the sort of mid '90s, I think. So it's pretty cool, and it's pretty cool, especially with Bilge Pump, how they've actually kind of been getting like a new fan base over the last few years. It's really heartening to see.
And then there's another band as well from Portsmouth that we were really good friends with called You're Smiling Now, but We'll All Turn Into Demons. And
That's the band name.
That's the band name, yeah. And they were like good friends of ours from the start, really, and still are,
Can you repeat the name? Because I'll forget that. I mean, it sounds.
Yeah, well, most people do. I think they, for years it's just been spelt wrong, in various forms and flyers. But no, they're called You're Smiling Now, but
Your Smile and Now.
You're Smiling Now.
Yeah.
You're smiling now, but
you're smiling now.
But we'll all turn into demons.
That's great.
It was around that time, but yeah, bands like Angel and Asked by the Trail of Dead, long names.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, they were our mates from Portsmouth, and we, became friends with them very quickly. So there's this kind of like these sort of like little pockets of, bands, dotted about the place.
Yeah.
And if we weren't playing shows with them, then we were, my dad was putting a lot of these bands on, or we were just going to see them,
And so you mentioned this place, The Lift. Was that one of the kind of key venues in the kind of DIY scene?
Not really, no. I mean, like when my dad started putting on shows, that was in Worthing, and there was a pub called the Vintner's Parrot. But Brighton-wise, most of the gigs going on really were at the Free Butt, which doesn't exist anymore, but that was the main sort of hub.
Yeah, that's the one I know of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also the Albert as well, which still exists. That was quite an important venue, and still is, And there's venues have kind of come and gone over the years, but around that time, those were like the main two that were being used,
Yeah, yeah. So Epideme, you started in 2002. What kind of music? So for people who don't know Epideme, what kind of music did you play, and what was your role in the band?
Well, we were something of a shambles, really. I mean, it was 2 guitars and drums, no bass, and we just listened to far too much Shellac.
That was it, yeah.
And just made a racket based on that, really. But we, I don't know. We it was just kind of like raucous, noise rock, I guess, at the time, and we didn't really, it was quite tongue in cheek. Well, maybe not tongue in cheek, but like we didn't take it too seriously, I guess. Like the lyrics were kind of nonsense, and we just would throw ourselves about, and we're never in tune, but it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I played guitar and sung in that band, and yeah, we played a lot more than we recorded,
Yeah, you did. So did you do quite a lot of tours? I mean, you were together for 2002 to about 2009. So
yeah, we toured a lot, and we basically played as many shows as we could, because we were we were still at school at the time when we started, and then soon after left school, so we didn't really have like much else to do.
Exactly.
We didn't have any kind of life priorities yet. So
just on the dole and playing in Epideme.
No, I mean, I do remember once, forgetting to book time off work to tour. So just halfway through the tour, just said, "Oh no, I can't come in today. I'm in, Grimsby, playing, I'm on tour." Like, "Oh, well, don't come back."
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I mean, I would never. I wouldn't even dream of doing that now. But like, then it wasn't really.
That's very punk rock of you to do that. It's
well,
fuck you guys.
I'd like to say it was, but it's probably just more, slackness. But yeah, we did play a lot, but we released very little, like a couple of 7 inches, really. Is all
yeah. What were any shows that you can remember that kind of stood out, that were epic proportions? Or
well, we were really lucky. We did get to play a lot of really cool shows. Like we did get to play with bands like, we played with Deerhoof once. We played with Coach Whips once, which was phenomenal. Like, they were phenomenal. We were dreadful, but that was an incredible show. And Cure Not You as well. We got to play with them once, and we,
Man.
these are like really cool shows. But I don't know, like the bad shows are kind of the ones that stick out in the memories more, really, because I don't know, like the sort of the absolute disasters are what are ingrained. Like,
It's the trauma, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I hope you'll bear with me on this, but I do have a good story of like our first tour we did.
Go for it, man. Yeah.
Basically, so the first tour we did, which was also the first tour any of us had ever done individually. We did about a 6-day tour or so in around the UK with a band from Margate called Candy Sniper, and they were a band that we were mates with, and we just booked a tour. I mean, and first the routing of it. This will give you an idea of how bad of an idea it was at the time. So it started in Oxford, then Bletchley, Chatham, Brighton, Preston. So it's just this, it's just this sort of up, down, sideways route that made no logical sense. But that's just just book the shows. Didn't really give any consider to logistics. But the night before the tour, 2 things happened. So first of all, Candy Sniper just got in touch with us and just said, we can't get the time off work, so we can't do a whole tour. Can we join you for the second day?
Right.
So then what happened was we had to pick them up from Margate after playing in Oxford to then go back to Bletchley. So that was the first thing. Yeah. So it was like, okay, so that's what we're gonna do. But then, of course, that night before the tour, we also realised that we hadn't sorted out any transport at all. So we just started scrambling around, and we gave our mate a call who had a car and said, "Oh, are you free for 5 days to drive us on tour?" "Yeah, when?" "Tomorrow." and he was free for like a couple of days. So what we did is we went in 2 cars. So we split in 2 cars. Our mate was driving one, and Finian, our drummer, drove the other car. And so the first day it was just us, and we were driving to Oxford, and we got to the venue, and the promoter was this really nice guy, but he was quite a sort of young. I don't think he really promoted many shows before, and he said that the venue had been double booked, but it could well be that he just hadn't booked the venue at all. I don't know.
Okay.
So he was, bless him, he was sort of scrambling around trying to find another venue around Oxford for us to play. And in the end, we just kind of cut our loss, said, "Look, dude, it doesn't matter. We'll, So he paid us out of his own pocket, which was
that's nice. Nice,
but very nice. But a bit of a little situation. So that was night 1. No gig. But a bit of money to cover 2 cars worth of petrol from Brighton to Oxford. And so what we decided to do, we decided to then drive to Margate that night to pick up the band, to then go to Bletchley. But when we got to Margate, we couldn't get hold of anybody, and we didn't know anyone lived. And we just, no one was answering our phones. And it got to like 1 a.m, and we had no choice but to just, scrap that idea. And we drove to a field just outside of Margate in an area called Dargate and Yorklets, for anyone
Dargate and Yorklets
to know the details. And we found this sort of farm field, and we just parked up in it and slept in that field. We slept in the cars, although Mike, the guitarist in Epideme, he slept in the field. I actually woke up and he was like on the field in a sleeping bag, sort of cocooned. And it was a boiling hot summer's morning, so we were just baking, the cars were getting baked in the sunlight, so we were woken up nice and early with that. And then a farmer sort of kind of chased us out. Because he just sort of youngsters just, sleeping in his farm.
It's good memories though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a good story to tell your kids and all that.
Well, indeed, yeah. But then we had to pick up the band from Margate and then drive to Bletchley. And the gig in Bletchley was incredible. I mean, I know you had Emma from Fat Out talk about the Bletchley
scene. Yeah.
And that was a real, like, just, it was so eye-opening to see this other kind of world, outside of ours. You know, it was in this leisure centre. We played in the middle.
Bletchley Leisure Centre, yeah.
Yeah, and we played in the middle, and the place was just packed with these young, you know, these kids, you know, just going mad, you know, just dancing and having a really great time. And that's still one of my favourite shows I've played in any band. And then we played in Chatham the next day, which was fine. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't as good as the Bletchley show, but it's still a cool show. But then on the way back, we were borrowing this van for the last couple of dates, and we broke it on the way back. There's just these flames, these sort of fumes emanating from the top of the car. And we broke this van, and at that point, after the Brighton gig, Candy Sniper said, we'll go home, actually. We won't come to Preston with you. So my dad drove Candy Sniper back to Margate, and we drove up to Preston to play one gig, you know, in a beaten up Micra. It was just like everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. But as soon as we got back after the 5 days, it was like, cool, when are we doing that again? You know?
I know, is that, isn't it? The chaos is like, I don't know, there's something beautiful in the chaos of doing those like DIY tours where it's like just cobbling everything together.
Yeah, you know, it's like it was just escapism. You know, you weren't really.
Definitely, yeah.
You weren't really put off by anything going wrong. You know, that's kind of made it more fun. I mean, I remember we played a gig in Wigan. You guys.
That's it. Yeah.
We broke again. It was in a Micra. We broke down on the way up, and one of you guys had to come and pick us up.
Probably my brother Ben, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And then the car got scrapped. So we're stranded in, 45 minutes outside of Wigan.
That's pretty grim.
You know? But it's a story. It's a memory. I feel like I'd be more anxious about that sort of stuff now if it happens, weirdly. But then it didn't really bother us.
Yeah, I mean, we did a similar tour in 2006. So my band I was in, Samuel Sharp, and we had some crazy experiences. When we had a show, I think we'd played a show in where was it? Southend-on-Sea, and then we ended up. I think our next show was in Wolverhampton or something, but we didn't have anywhere to stay that night for some reason. I can't remember. And then we ended up on a like a hard shoulder in Milton Keynes. Parked up and just literally we tried to sleep in the van, but there was no room because of all the gear. So my two brothers just got out, put the sleeping bags on the road, basically on the hard shoulder, and just tried to sleep there. And then the car turned up, and it was just like, fucking hell, this is grim, man. But for me, I mean, at the time I was 18, so this was and it was like doing a tour was just like, this is awesome, man. Like,
yeah,
it was the best time of my life.
Yeah, I don't think that kind of excitement and drive has really ever kind of left me. I mean, a friend of mine, Joe, who plays in Hey Colossus, he wrote a book a couple of years ago about the various stories of being in a band because he's been doing it for years, and there's a section in that's about a tour that Lower Slaughter and his other band did together in Europe. His other band, Henry Blacker, we did about 5 dates in Europe a couple of years ago, and there were disasters in that, and we're all like much older now, but it's still not a problem. It's like you kind of go on these tours knowing that you will lose money.
Yeah.
It's like but you don't even really think about that,
But you're playing your own music, and it's like, people, maybe you'll get some shows where there's people who are genuinely like enjoying it, and you're like, fuck, this is,
Yeah, I still get just as much fun from touring as I did when I was, a teenager. Like, that is my favorite thing about being in the band, definitely. Some people it's a grind. I've got friends who play in bands, and touring is like the worst part of it, and I totally get that. But for me, it's the reward. It's what makes it all kind of I don't know. makes it all feel kind of right. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're not making money from it, and you're finding it a grind, I wouldn't see what's the point in doing it. I mean, you probably got like 5% chance of being successful, and so you should just be playing for yourself essentially, just so you moved to London, and your next project was called Shudder Pulps. So whereabouts in London did you move to, and you want to tell us a bit about that?
I lived kind of all over the place really in London. I lived there for about 3 years, and I lived in King's Cross for a bit. And I lived in Peckham towards the end. I was basically in London for uni, which, I don't know why I did that really. But,
what did you study?
I did film in English, but I haven't done anything with that since. But I kind of I didn't go to halls or anything like that. I went to I moved in with some friends that I knew already, and I kind of already knew people there.
Yeah.
So I didn't really immerse myself in the sort of student lifestyle,
Yeah. So your band Shudder Pulps. What kind of music did you play? And
it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird because I really haven't even thought about this band much in the last few years, because it was a kind of bit of an in-between band in a way. Basically what it was me and a couple of friends, one of whom was in Epideme as well, but he joined Epideme later. Mike formed a band with. He left a few years into it, and then we got a guy called John in to basically play guitar. And then when Epideme kind of ended, he was already living in London. I moved over, and we started a band with another friend of mine, and I was on drums for that band. And I don't know, it's kind of like sort of like shoegazy, sort of indie-ish kind of stuff. Like we were really into like Country Teasers and My Bloody Valentine and stuff. So I guess we're kind of making stuff. There's a lot of, it's weird, this is like sort of like early 2010s, I guess. So there's a lot of sort of shoegaze punk around at that time, and I guess we were kind of doing that sort of stuff. But I don't know, I'm not sure if it's I haven't listened to any of it in ages. We didn't really release much. We recorded a whole album, and we never released it. No one's ever heard it.
Why didn't you release it?
By the time we'd finished it, the band was kind of dissolving anyway, and we're kind of like drifting apart. So it's just one of those things that just like never really materialized. But if anyone wants to hear it, I'll get in touch with me and I'll send it to them. I mean, maybe we'll release it one day, but I don't know if there's really anyone out there that is eager to hear it. We kind of came and went a bit. We weren't really. I mean,
it was a bit of a kind of transitionary, I guess, band or period in your life. By the sounds of it, would you say?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It's just like a band I was in for a couple of years that was just a lot of fun. I mean, it's probably the most fun band I've ever been in. Like the guys I was in the band with, they were like really good fun and really good friends.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun, but I'm not sure if like the music really holds up that much these days. I mean, the two other guys who are in the band, they've got a different band now called Life Drawings.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're great. And I'd say that band is much more the kind of band that both of them
more complete sort of
really wanted to do. Like I think they're both doing the band that like is much more what they want to do. And likewise for me, I think like I'm much more kind of comfortable in the band I'm in now. But like it was a lot of fun. Like my main memories of that band really are more just laughing You know,
Just-
it was kind of the right balance, like having a laugh and making music. We kind of we sort of shared the same sense of humor.
Just very laid back and chill, and
yeah. But we were kind of hanging out with, you know, a bunch of bands at the time who were, you know, pretty cool, and we weren't anywhere near as good as them. You know?
So did you kind of connect with some of the people in kind of the, I guess, the scene, the small kind of music scenes in London and that? And did you go to
London's
some shows?
so big, you know, it's such a big place that it's a different kind of scene, or, you know, like we were friends with bands like Cold Pumas and Sauna Youth, bands like that. And there's a band in Brighton called Ceilings who we were good mates with, and they were really great. And we played a lot of shows with bands like that. But it was I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a blur, really, in a weird way. I can't remember like a whole lot of it, but and we toured a couple of bands, toured a couple of times with a band that John was in, who is in Lower Slaughter, and that was really good fun. But yeah, I don't know. There's not, you know, it's just a kind of like, you know, it's just a sort of band in between, you know, whilst I was living in London. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, did you end up moving back to sort of Brighton or Worthing after you finish your degree?
Yeah, I moved to Brighton. Yeah, after that, I lived there for a few years, and I live back in Worthing now again. So I've and even when I was living in London, I was still kind of in Brighton all the time, playing gigs and going to gigs. I kind of never lost touch of that, really. Pretty sort of tied to it.
Would you talk a bit about your dad, because you said he put on gigs and stuff, and under the name this is the kind of promotion name that he used, Tatty Seaside Town?
Yeah.
So what could you tell us a bit about that, and what kind of gigs he put on, and which venues that were kind of key to that?
So he started putting on shows in Worthing around 2002, and so from the start, really, he was putting on, you know, kind of friends bands, so like bands like Charlotte Field, Cove, Bilge Pump, you know, and these bands would play in Worthing, and it was really cool. But the scene at the time in Worthing was pretty kind of insular, you know. It was like, you know, there had to be a local band playing, otherwise no one would come, you know. And there weren't many good local bands. There were a couple, but not loads.
Yeah.
So he was putting on these bands, and it just made more sense to do it in Brighton. So he kind of moved over to Brighton after a year or so.
Yeah.
And it still does it now, you know. Well, not right now, of course, you know, no one can, but he kind of it kind of like grew and grew, and there was like a period for quite a while where he was putting on quite big international bands like Melt Banana and
amazing.
Mike Watt,
yeah.
You know, and those are really cool shows. And then, you know, in the last few years, he's kind of like sort of downsized it a bit, and these days it's just kind of like he does like sort of semi-regular all-dayers, which is, you know, sort of friends bands. You know, when I say friends bands, I mean, like, you know, like bands like Part Chimp and, you know, Hey Colossus and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, kind of the loyal, you know, characters, you know, that we've, you know, known for years and stuff, you know. And it's and new friends as well, you know.
So does he play himself, or is he just a promoter?
No, he's never played anything ever. Ever. I've never seen him even hold an instrument.
Yeah, I found that there's some promoters that I've met over the years, like, who've just never, they've been totally focused and dedicated to just doing promotion, and they've just never touched an instrument. I've never touched an instrument. And then, I don't know. I don't know why I find it a bit weird, because I'm like, I thought you'd have a bit of a dabble, because it's like, it's a DIY scene, you know, everybody's kind of, you know, getting involved. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a few friends as well that like absolutely love music but don't play. I mean, it's I think it's pretty cool. Kind of possibly potentially a bit less ego maybe with it, or maybe not. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
and I guess as well it means that if you're not playing in the band but you're putting on shows, you're not always trying to get your own band on the bill.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
are some positives. Yeah.
So let's talk about your most recent project, which I kind of did a little promo for,
Mm.
and we talked a little bit about the band at the beginning, Lower Slaughter.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, what kind of music do Lower Slaughter play, and what's your role in this project, this band?
So we kind of make sort of, I don't know, heavy party rock. I guess is how I can describe it. It's like kind of Piss Jeans, AC/DC kind of vibes, um, uh, and I play bass in that band, but I'm also I don't really bring much to the table on that front. Really, I'm not really a bass player. They had to convince me to play bass. When the band started. Um, so I do kind of wing it a bit there. But I guess you asked me what my role is. I guess my role is I play bass, but I'm the sort of the admin-y one. I'm the one that kind of does the emails.
So all about writing songs. How do you write the songs then?
Yeah. So I guess what you're referring to there is because of the geographical thing. So our singer lives in Glasgow, and so when we started the band, we had a different singer originally. Well, in fact, we didn't have a singer at all. We started as not as an instrumental band, but we just started with the three of us just making music, and then we got a singer. It was a guy called Max, and he was in the band for about a year, and then he left. And we thought that'd be the end of the band, but then our friend Sinead, who lived in Brighton at the time, asked if she could join and sing. And she used to be in a band from Glasgow called Divorce, who a lot of people remember, who are a great band. They were kind of sort of around the same era as like what we were talking about earlier, like Charlotte Field and all that lot. They were the Glasgow band that you would normally hook up with, play shows with in Glasgow.
Yeah.
We sort of knew her from back in the day a bit. And yeah, so she joined the band and then moved back to Glasgow a couple of years later. But we kind of made a decision to carry on the band because by that point we were going to put an album out on a label and stuff. So we were, I don't know, we weren't ready to stop quite yet. So we put the effort in. But in terms of writing stuff, I mean, the way it's kind of worked for the past few years is the three of us have written music together, and then we send it to Sinead, our singer, by email, or we'll kind of arrange some sort of songwriting session. But normally what we used to do is we would practice just before playing. Like, so if we had like, a bunch of shows lined up, we'd book a couple of practice in just before. But that didn't allow quite so much time to write as a group. So a lot of the time it was, writing would be based on stuff that we'd sent over, but we've since done 2 albums, and our plan was to essentially spend 2020 just songwriting, because all our spare time would go towards playing shows, and spare time is nowhere near as well, there's nowhere near as much now as there was when we were playing in bands 10-15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Everything changes, doesn't it? All your responsibilities and kind of commitments and circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. Like, jobs, careers and families and things like that, it's a lot harder. So the spare time would always go towards just playing as many shows as we could within that. But we kind of made a decision last year to not really play as many shows, but use the time to write as a group again, like we used to when we all lived together in Brighton.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we all know what happened next.
Yeah. And so, what about the name? I really like the name. Where does the name come from? Is there some interesting story behind it, or was it just?
So Lower Slaughter is a village in the Cotswolds, and the way the name came about really is I found a postcard in like a sort of thrift store, and like a jumble store kind of thing, and it was a Lower Slaughter postcard. But it was this really nice charcoal painting of this village, and it was very quaint and lovely, and really picturesque. And it said Lower Slaughter at the bottom, and the name just didn't really correspond with the imagery in my head.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm like,
yeah, it sounded a lot more menacing and kind of I don't know medieval or something, but the picture didn't really fit with that. But yeah, it's not really an interesting story beyond that, really, because as with most band names, I think what really happened is, we wrote a load of songs, booked a gig in, realised we needed a name, and that was the best one at the time.
Yeah, same with my bands I've been in. It's just like, just kind of cobble something together. And it was interesting with my band, Samuel Sharp, is that most people would think it's some kind of like solo acoustic, dude playing like, middle of the road kind of, singer-songwriter stuff. And then they walk in the room and it's like a 3-piece math rock, post-rock band, 3 brothers just like playing really loud. And so it didn't really match with the name, you know what I mean? Probably wasn't the best name to pick, but it's just kind of what...
I quite like band names that don't sort of match the music sometimes. I think that's kind of quite cool. I mean,
yeah,
especially for like sort of the heavier type of music. It's like if you're playing kind of heavy rock music, to put it one way, and your name is like I don't know, God of Thunder or something. It's like you kind of know what you know what you're probably going to get.
Yeah.
So when it's a bit more kind of less identifiable, I think that's.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the 2 albums that you've released? So 2017 you released an album called What Big Eyes, and then 2019 Some Things Take Work. Which would you say you're kind of, I would say, most proud of, or you don't see it like that, or what do you think about the albums you've released and the music you've...
I'm definitely proud of both of them. I mean, having played in bands for this long, and to actually be able to release albums now, I've always wanted to, but that hasn't really happened in the previous bands I've been in, so I'm proud to have just released 1 album, let alone 2. But they're so the first one, What Big Eyes, that was, I think, like most debut albums, I think it was kind of just a bunch of songs that we've been playing live for the best part of a year or so, and we just recorded them as quickly as we could and put them out. And by that point, and it was cool as well, we put them out on a label called Box. So we're on Box Records, which is run by a guy called Matt, who sings in the band Pigs. So that was really exciting as well, to have a label, interested in putting our stuff out, because until that, prior to that, you'd always be sending demos out, or I would be, just sending demos out to friends' labels, or putting the money into releasing something yourself and having 100 copies left in the attic,
Yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah, indeed. So that was the first album, and it did much better than we thought it would. It got some decent radio play, and it sold really quickly, and we were pretty blown away. And I think I think I'm really proud of it, but it's a weird one. I feel like it is essentially just a bunch of it's just our live set at the time, really.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like a snapshot, I guess, of that time.
Yeah.
And then with the second album, it was a lot different because by that point Sinead had moved back to Glasgow, so our songwriting structure was different, and we also, were writing an album rather than recording an album of songs. There's like a different dynamic to it. So the songs were, everything was written in a sort of different way. And I mean, looking back, like, there are some aspects to the second album that maybe feel a bit rushed. Like, we hadn't played the song. A lot of those songs we hadn't played live as much. A couple we hadn't played live at all. So they weren't quite as bedded in. But then that's also not a bad thing, because it meant that we just sort of focused on the actual songwriting a lot more. So it's a very different album, but I think it's much more of an actual full album from start to finish. It has a kind of like an album flow, and there's like, it can be listened to. I feel like Some Things Take Work, I think it can be listened to as an album from start to finish a lot. Like, if you just listen to like tracks from the first album just dotted about, if you change the order of it, it's not, as big a deal. But I think Some Things Take Work is much more of a body of work, in that sense. But I'm proud of them both for different reasons, I'm not sure what else to say about it, really. I mean, I think, and recording it as well. Recording the second album was different. We did that in like a studio in like a farm in the middle of nowhere in Wales. So we did that kind of, pretentious thing of going to some rural area, having no contact with anyone, Whereas the first one is just, in London. But they're both recorded with our mate Wayne, who records a lot of bands of like similar music. He's like quite in demand these days, and it's always been really good fun with him, and he kind of totally gets our vibe and ours, what we're trying to do, and it wouldn't be the same without him, really.
So have you done a few tours, and is there any shows that you can? Because you said in the emails that it was like your kind of, I suppose, most kind of successful, if you want to use that word, successful kind of band and project. And
I mean, when I say that successful, like I mean, and just in terms of like, we've got to play some really cool shows, and we've sold, a bunch of records, and made, kind of crossed over to people that we hadn't with previous bands that we've been in. There was like a bit of a difference in that sense. Like we toured with Pigs, we played with them a few times, and that's always been an absolute joy and really exciting. We played with them, because they've just got bigger and bigger over the years, and we've kind of been with them along that, sort of supporting them here and there, and each time the venues just get bigger, so it's been like really, really exciting and heartening to be, to witness that and be a part of it,
So the like fairly big venues, they tend to be kind of sold out as well? Is it?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Like we played the Lexington, like one of my favourite venues in London to play in is the Lexington, and every time we played there, it's never been I don't think we've ever like played our own show at Lexington, but we've always been supporting a band like Pigs or something like that, and it's always been rammed, and it's just, there's always been a really cool vibe and atmosphere there, and then like when we released the first album, we did a couple of album launches in Brighton and London, and they were both sold out, and that just never happened with the bands we've been in before that.
It must have been.
You'd always have to be like, sort of like if you're playing a show in your hometown or whatever, be like texting earlier in the day, just texting as many people in the area saying, "Oh, playing tonight, you around,
Yeah.
relying on your mates and and whatever." But like with that band, it was like, we were just staggered at how there were like, all these people in the room and we didn't know them. They weren't our friends. That was just like, wow.
They're there because they like your music and they're a fan. It's like.
Yeah, it kind of crossed over. Like I said, it got some, decent radio play. At the time, we got to do a session at Maida Vale off the back of it for Hugh Stevens, and that was like a dream come true. To be able to record at Maida Vale. Was just, that's probably the best. That's probably the most. That's probably the proudest moment I've had of being in any band. That was amazing. And then, getting to hear it on the radio, a week or so later, it's just, it's like being a kid again, like tuning in and, on the dot to hear your band,
Amazing.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your kind of, like you said, you're doing a lot during, obviously, the world's on shutdown, pandemic for the last year or so. You're just writing songs at the moment.
Not really. So basically, January last year, so January 2020, we started writing together. We spent a weekend in Glasgow starting to work on, stuff for potentially our next record. And that went really well. It was like, we kind of had a skeleton of songs here and there that we were working on. And then, a month or so later, lockdown hit. And we haven't seen each other since. We haven't been in the company of each other since. I mean, the restrictions in Scotland are obviously, were stricter. They're pretty much the same now. But so it's that, and then also like just life priorities and stuff like we were talking about earlier. We just haven't really got around to it. It's kind of it's been on pause. And none of us live in Brighton anymore, actually, weirdly. I mean, a couple of us live close to Brighton, like just on the outskirts, and I live in Worthing again now. But we're not actually a Brighton band anymore because I don't think any of us technically live there. It's a bit of a lie. But yeah, so we're kind of just getting together is even harder. But I think it's that kind of, because no one knew how long this would last, Yeah. And I think at the time, around like sort of March, April last year, it's kind of like, well, we'll get together when we can, and we'll start working on stuff again. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but like, the months have just flown by in a lot of ways, In a lot of ways it hasn't, just being stuck indoors, time's been moved very slowly.
No, opposite for me, mate.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. But, it is like, before you know it, it's been a year, and we haven't done anything, and it's just,
it does feel like we've lost a year. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
wait, we're in 2021. Where did that year go? It's like almost like a kind of, I don't know, some kind of like depression, like where you just forget everything. It's just this like fog. And then
yeah. So. But so it has kind of flown by, and because of that, we just haven't really given any consideration to, not having done anything, or not making any plans. But it's been kind of nice in a way. I mean, we kind of had the year set out to not really do much anyway. Like, we weren't really going to play many gigs. But if anything, it's just kind of like, lengthened, kind of made it even slower, So I think if we were probably going to start, releasing stuff around 2021, it's probably more likely, it'd be like a year or two from now, because, it will just take us a while to get back into the swing of it anyway.
Yeah. We don't know. We still don't know when. There's no definite time when it's gonna get back to normal. So.
No, but even when it does get back to normal, I think because of the nature of how slow we work these days,
Yeah, definitely.
It'll take some time to bed back in a bit, get back into the swing of it, because we live so far apart. We'll be more inclined to just like see each other and just enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And, write songs, but I have faith, that we will, get back into it, but it's kind of in the distance at the moment, unfortunately.
So I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit. We mentioned Charlottefield a few times, and they for me personally, they were like one of the most kind of inspirational kind of bands in my life. And when I got the vinyl, How Long Are You Staying, it was like I still remember it, and like I got to see them a few times live and that, and they're one of my favorite bands. So I mean,
I think a lot of people's favorite bands.
Yeah, and being a drummer as well, obviously, like for me, Ash, like the drummer from Charlottefield, he's just insane, like incredible drummer. So took huge inspiration from him as well. And what kind of influence did they have on kind of the Brighton music scene, and what's your take on them, and how did they impact you as a musician and stuff? And
well, they were pretty much the best band around at the time, in my opinion. But they're also really good mates, so it wasn't like, I don't know. It's I never saw a bad Charlottefield show, even if they might tell you differently, I would, they would play, they would absolutely blow my minds,
I've got a story about that actually.
Right.
So I think it might have been the same gig that you played in Preston. We mentioned this in a call that we had. I saw at Charlottefield. I think they were touring with Projections, who are another band.
Yeah.
And it was like, honestly, probably the best gig I've ever been to. There wasn't that many people there, but like the atmosphere, the intensity, for me personally, they played a great show. And like seeing Ash as well, just like as a drummer, I was like, God, that he's a fucking god. And then after, I think, kind of went up to him, said, man, that was awesome. He was just like, oh shit, that was terrible. And I was just like, I didn't understand it, It was like, to me, like, you just played a great show, and it's weird how like the people who are playing in the band can sometimes see it differently,
Yeah, I think a lot of people like that. I mean, us in Lower Slaughter can be like that, I think, like you hear and see things very differently to other, what the audience is,
Yeah.
And likewise, like if like 10, if like 9 people tell you it was amazing, one person says it wasn't that great, you don't listen to those 9 people, you only listen to
that's true.
One,
Yeah.
You'll ruminate on that. And I do that a lot. And I think that's kind of natural. But they were an absolutely fantastic band. And I've since met people who, share my music taste, but, are a bit younger and they weren't really around to see them and they haven't heard of them. And I try to explain, it's like really difficult to explain because you just sound like you're sort of romanticizing it a bit too much, like saying, oh, well, they were amazing. They were absolutely amazing. Yeah. That's all we can say. But they definitely influenced me and like us, in bands I was playing at the time. But they're also, they're just really good friends as well. Like Tom, who sang and played guitar in that band, he's really old friends of my dad's and me. I first met Tom at that Fugazi gig that I mentioned, actually. So
wow. Yeah.
I've known Tom a long time, and he's him and Ash both worked at my dad. So my dad used to have a record shop as well, in Brighton, and they both worked there. So but I've always been more inspired by like friends, making really good music and being really good people and helping you out and like kind of supporting you what you do. And they were definitely one of those bands, at that time. They're great. I'm not sure what else to say about them really. I mean, I actually got them to reform for a one-off as a surprise, which was one of my greater achievements.
Oh, really? So this is so they were together. Off the top of your head, I think they finished playing around 2008. Was it?
Thereabouts, yeah, thereabouts.
2001, I think, was that when they? And you said that it was actually his kind of solo project, and then he formed the band around that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, around 2001, I guess would have been around that sort of time, like 2000. But then, so my dad, like I said, my dad had a record shop, and then he closed that. He had that shop for about, I don't know, a decade or something like that, and he closed it. And I organised a surprise party the night of the shop closing, and I got some bands to play. So Shudder Pulps, my old band, we played. I'm Being Good played. The Sticks, who are another band from Brighton, they played. And then I can't remember how it happened, but I was chatting to Tom about it. I mean, him and me were kind of like organising it together. And he had a new band by that point, and I think I honestly can't remember. Maybe I just said, "Oh, so do you want to play?" And he was like, "Yeah, we'll get Charlottesville to play." You know, I was like, "What?" Because they would never. I mean, they've said as much. They wouldn't have reformed under any other circumstances. That was like a sort of an exception to the rule. Wow. And they maybe had like one practice before, and they were so tight, and it was like no time had passed, and it was fantastic. I was in tears.
I'm not surprised, man. Honestly, man, I'm telling you, I don't want to kind of over exaggerate, but like for me, I kind of fell in love with music and playing music and being in a band when I kind of got that album How Long Are You Staying, and just seeing Charlottesville live, and that, like, for me they were just a huge inspiration and influence kind of early on as myself as a musician, playing drums and playing in bands and that. So but that's amazing, man. Yeah, that they did that show for you, you know.
Yeah, I think there might even be some stuff on YouTube from it, you know. But it was. I mean, it was an emotional night anyway. You know, it was like, you know, kind of bigging up, you know, a record shop that by that point, you know, was no longer existing. It was, you know, it was in this little village hall. Well, not village hall, but like a sort of town hall, you know, in Brighton. And it was just packed with friends, you know, from all over the place, from like, you know, back in the day and stuff. And, you know, it was like a real proper get together anyway. Yeah. So, you know, it was quite an emotional evening. You know, there's a lot of like sort of drunken tears around the but then when Charlottesville played, it was just this ridiculously it was just a very special moment, you know. And Ash even sort of grabbed the mic and said, you know, like, you know, we wouldn't have done this otherwise, you know, sort of thing. It was like, wow, you know.
Wow, man.
Okay, it was a long time ago though as well. That, you know, like I was thinking about this, you know, because you mentioned Charlottesville, and it's like, God, that's like, you know, a long time ago now. But they're all doing like other stuff now, which is also great. You know, they're all doing different bands and all different as well. Like, you know, they're different kinds of things. Which is really.
I'm
cool.
hoping to get Tom on. It would be a massive honor and privilege to have him on the on the show.
Yeah,
so.
you know, he's a, you know, a very talented guy, but above anything else, just a really good guy and a good friend.
So what? One last question. This is something I've been asking all my guests. In your opinion, what is selling out? And what would you consider selling out? So, because I was thinking about, like, if you're in a position, say you're in a band like Lower Slaughter and you know, Virgin Records or something, you know, offer you a deal or something like that. Would you say no? Would you turn it down? Would you, you know, where do you kind of draw the line? And do you understand the question?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think in that particular instance of, if Virgin, I mean, I think I don't think we'd really be in a position to do anything anyway. Regardless of the stature of the label. But I don't know. I mean, if you'd asked me this when I was like 17 or something,
It's changed, hasn't it? Yeah, you're
I'd
right.
probably give you quite a sort of impassioned rant, about these sorts of things. But I don't really think in those sort of terms these days. I mean, I work for a company that, I work for a music distributor, and the whole point of it is to make a profit from bands' records. Really, at the end of the day, that is that's what maintains the business and pays the bills. But there's nothing. But get it straight. There's nothing wrong with making music, with making money from making music. But I mean, I wish I could have made money from playing in bands after all these years.
Yeah.
I mean, well, beyond that, I wish I could have broken even. That'd have been nice.
Yeah. Even just that. Yeah.
Even just that. But I think it's just as long as you're in keeping with your own sort of your own deal and your own sort of moral compass, your ethics. I mean, if you form a band and your whole goal is to make money and make a career out of it and be famous, whatever, signed to a major label, and it happens, you haven't sold out, because that's your whole thing. And likewise, if something comes along that seems like a good deal to you personally, that's your choice. It's just as long as you stay true to what you believe in and what you think is right and wrong for you, then you're only really saying that to yourself if you go against that. As long as you're not compromising your sort of artistic integrity. It's a lazy example, and this is like the textbook example to use. But if a band like Fugazi, sort of suddenly, allowed their songs to be used for like a McDonald's advert or something, most of their fan base would be within their right to be a bit confused. Given their staunch, their quite.
That would not happen in a million years.
No, of course it wouldn't. It's a pointless thing to even say, really, because it wouldn't happen. But the reason it wouldn't happen is because they've set out, they've set out clear ethics and morals in their practices and their lyrics. And so by doing something like that, they that would be considered selling out. But if you don't, if you're not going against, if you're doing something but it's not against something you've set out beforehand, like Lower Slaughter, we never we didn't form with any kind of like basis of like, we won't do this, or we will do that, or we want to do this. It's just making music and having fun, enjoying it, and we've, things have kind of, there's been the occasional thing that's cropped up, which, if we had done it or it had happened, someone might have been like, oh, that's a bit of a sellout or something, but like, we don't really, I mean, they haven't really happened anyway, so there's no point even mentioning,
it comes to mind the, like, Iggy Pop doing the, he did, didn't he do like a car insurance advert or something? And I was just like,
well,
like stuff like that. I'm like,
But I mean, I think Iggy Pop has always been a kind of celebrity, even from the start, really. He's always been a kind of, same with like Johnny Rotten or something, It's like, I know he does these adverts and stuff, but I think he's always been a bit kind of, he's always been a mainstream figure, really,
Yeah.
I don't
Different,
think
isn't it?
He's a bit of a kind of cartoon character in that sense, really, I think if you lay out principles and then you go against them, or you do something that's contradicting that, then that's on you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's it. You got to live with yourself, haven't you? So I guess it's just your choice at the end of the day. But
yeah, I don't really see many problems with it as long as it's not, if it's just your choice,
Yeah.
And then obviously, there's exceptions to the rule. There's like, you never like I said, McDonald's or something. It's like got to have some principles, and some yeah.
I mean, obviously everything's changed, like technology and the way music is distributed, and I mean a lot of pros, a lot of cons, the kind of the death of the record shops and that, but in a way they haven't died because people still want to have physical kind of mementos and copies of bands' music. They want to see it, the sleeve and the artwork, and but yeah, I think technology and all that's changed, and so that's kind of changed the entire music industry as well. So
yeah, and counterculture is very different, to what it was when I was starting to play in bands. Things evolve and things change, and grow, not necessarily for the better, but yeah, technology has made the underground sort of DIY scene a different type of scene,
Yeah.
But in a lot of positive ways, it's a lot easier to. In a lot of ways, it's a lot easier to be in a band now.
Yeah.
Get music heard. But then it's also a lot more overwhelming, but I don't know. Yeah, there's pros and cons with everything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I don't think I could ever accuse anyone of selling out, really, unless they had specifically laid out something beforehand, but was contradicting what they did later on.
Yeah, definitely.
Do what you do,
Yeah. So thanks so much, Barney, for coming on the show, and
for having me, man.
Yeah, and good luck with the band, and hopefully, we can, if you do come up, post COVID, if you do come up north and play, let me know, and I'll.
Yeah, I mean, well,
come down.
As soon as it's safe to do so, I'm sure we will. I'm sure everyone will. It's desperate to get.
There's just going to be like an explosion of gigs. It's just going to be it's going to be gigs every night for like 6 months, just to try and catch up.
I'm quite excited about it. I think one thing I think you might find is that you'll start to see places that weren't being used as venues start to get used, because there's going to be such a demand for gigs once this is calmed down.
That's a good point.
I think all the venues will get booked up in a flash. And I think you'll get a lot of bands booking shows in like scout huts and things like that. And I think I hope I like to think that there'll be a even richer kind of DIY scene on the other end of this that wasn't there before.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I might be totally wrong about that. I might be romanticizing it and wishful thinking, but that's my kind of hope. I think there'll be like sort of a new breed of gig promoting to accommodate the sort of the appetite that everyone will have, built up during this.
The DIY kind of ethics and drive has never gone away. Like I was talking in my last episode, going all the way back to like DC punk in the 80s with Fugazi and Ian MacKaye, that it still lives in every generation. It never goes away. It's like, so I don't think it'll ever die, that kind of.
No, not at all. But I think this, there'll be even more demand and sort of enthusiasm for it, even more so. And I hope that we'll see some exciting things to come of that. Different kinds of shows and different kinds of communities and stuff. Of gigs and shows and bands. and hopefully not too far away.
Yeah, definitely, man. All right, thanks, Barney. Take care, and I'll see you soon, man. All right.
Cheers, man. Nice one.
Thank you, Barney. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. I would say that was probably the most fun I've had so far in the 11 episodes that I've done so far in this podcast series. Barney's such a lovely guy, and it was such an easy, laid-back recording. And especially when we start to talk about Charlottesville and them doing the last show, or like a reunion show for the record store send-off. That was really special because Charlottesville personally have a really special place in my heart. You know, like I was saying in the podcast, they were huge inspiration for me, and I think for my band that I was in with my brothers Samuel Sharp. I feel like they definitely influenced us massively in our kind of our sound. So, and with that, I'm really excited and happy to announce that Thomas House from Charlottesville is going to come on the show and do an episode. So I'm really just chuffed so much, and I'm going to try and fit as much as I can in, as much time as he'll give me. I'm so interested to know, the kind of ins and outs of the band and, each album that they recorded. So, yeah, watch this space. It's going to be happening. Thomas House, Charlottesville is going to be coming on. If you want to check out Lower Slaughter, they're on Facebook, facebook.com/Lower Slaughter, all one word. They're on Bandcamp, lowerslaughter.bandcamp.com, and they're on Twitter, twitter.com/Lower Slaughter, all one word. And the record label that they're under, Box Records, so that's box-records.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please could you like and subscribe to my channel to help the podcast grow. And if you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could you leave a review under the ratings and review tab. You can also find me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway. I'm also on Instagram, instagram.com/The Scene Was Dead Anyway. And I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/TSWDA. Just want to give a little shout out to a friend in Mexico. She's an amazing graphic designer. She's helped me with some of my social media artwork because I'm pretty useless at stuff like that. So just want to say thank you. And if you need someone, she's very talented, very experienced graphic designer. You can find her on hellomисsk.com. That's hellomissk.com. HELLOMISSK, all one word, .com. Next up on the show is Ian Martin. He runs a record label called Call and Response. He's based in Japan. In his own words, stupid fucking childish noise since 2005, comprising new music releases, live events and DJ parties. Call and Response Records is a Tokyo-based label specializing in post-punk, new wave and indie music from the Japanese underground music scene. The label started in 2005 and has released a number of albums and EPs, compilation albums and smaller DIY projects. We organise the regular Call and Response Indie Disco and annual Koenji Pop Festival events in and around the Tokyo suburb of Koenji, as well as various other events in Tokyo and around Japan. Call and Response is also associated with the Japanese music blog Clear and Refreshing, which features reviews and articles on a broader range of Japanese pop, indie and underground music. You can also keep up with Call and Response on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Call and Response Tokyo, all one word. And Twitter, twitter.com/CAR Records. That's twitter.com/CAR Records. Ian is also a mutual friend of Dave McMahon and Ryotaro Aoki, who's two of my previous guests, so they're all kind of part of the same underground scene in Tokyo. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I'm your host, Rick Walland, and you were listening to The Scene Was Dead Anyway.